Back in September, we announced the acquisition of a company called Jardines Lloyd Thompson, or JLT, which is the number 6 or number 7 broker in the world, with revenues somewhere around $2 billion worldwide, 10,000 people in 40 countries. So a significant company that we decided to take over as there was an opportunity. And obviously in the process, we ultimately spent close to $7 billion in order to pay for the equity value of the company, as well as refinancing JLT's debt. That obviously required a lot of treasury activities with respect to raising that money, with respect to hedging the foreign exchange exposure, hedging interest rate exposure, managing relationships with our bank group, as well as with the rating agencies, which are very important to us. And ultimately closing the transaction successfully in a way that it is happening flawlessly, which it ultimately did. Every transaction is a little different, but in our case, time is what was of the essence, because we ultimately had to have committed financing in place at the date of the announcement of the deal due to British takeover regulations. The so-called fund certain condition, and bridge financing was really the only avenue for us to go in order to have that committed financing available basically within 9 days. That's what we did. Yes, ultimately the bank syndicated among our larger bank group, and in this process I decided also to renew our committed credit facility. We have a 5-year facility in place for $1.8 billion now that we decided to renew at this time, so that all our banks, and we have 18 banks in our credit facility, they basically go to their credit committees once and get the bridge financing approved as well as the credit facility. So that worked out very well. So ultimately, we needed to secure the full amount of the bridge financing, which was £5.2 billion. And you're right, we are a US dollar functional company, of course. And the majority of the funds we actually raised in the US capital markets, in the US bond market. And it was important for us to secure the exchange risk that we basically incur through this transaction. So we entered into a forward contract, but it was unique in the sense that it actually had a deal contingency component. That means in case the deal would fall apart for whatever reason, regulatory reasons or others, or an interloper, for example, there could be as well, we basically could walk away from the forward contract. If you don't have that, you basically have to execute the forward contract. You have to buy £5.2 billion sterling, even if you don't need it. And so you convert it back in the spot market, and there's a huge mark-to-market risk, of course, that we did not want to incur. That's why we decided to go the route of a deal contingent forward contract, which costs money, of course, but in the context of the overall deal model, we accounted for that, and we felt comfortable that's the right way in protecting the company from that risk. Yeah, and we had lengthy internal discussions with the executive management, even the finance committee of the board, and we ultimately all agreed that this is the right way in keeping the company safe. Obviously, Marsh McLennan is in the business of managing risk for its clients, and we view ourselves as a prudent risk management company ourselves. In that context, it was absolutely imperative to review that risk and make a conscious decision that this is not where we ultimately want to gain or lose in the context of the transaction. We want to protect the company. That's the goal. So certainly there was an interest rate exposure that we had between the deal announcement and ultimately going to the capital markets and issuing bonds that we did in the first quarter. And so in the fourth quarter, in early November, we decided to at least take some of the treasury risk off the table and enter into T-locks that would protect us against the volatility of treasuries. But what sometimes happens, the market moved against us. In fact, as you know, equity markets completely plummeted towards the end of November and in December. And with it also the treasuries in the United States. And so our T-locks actually were always out of the money. But again, we had accounted for it in the deal model, and we were comfortable that this was the prudent way in protecting the company against that volatility. And markets move sometimes in different directions, but we accounted for the cost, and so from that perspective, we are comfortable with that. So, yeah. I think the most important thing is that you try to anticipate as many aspects of as possible in such a complex transaction, and try to be the trusted advisor to your CFO who is counting on you, that you identify all the aspects, all the risks, and openly communicate them. That is the key. Openly communicate and get buy-in and consensus all the way up to the CEO, even members of the board, and then execute. Of course, flawless execution is important, and then certainly have the right partners in the financial world, on the banking side, by your side to support the transaction. Openly communicate to them what you're trying to accomplish, and then usually things work out. We were ultimately very content. It was a very professional working relationship throughout the transaction. When we went to the bond market, obviously we had several underwriters of our bank group that supported us along the way, and that worked very efficiently.